Everybody ready? You're centered. Found your happy places. Okay.
Blank alert. Blank alert. Blank alert.
Cool. So welcome everybody to the Black Alert Podcast, your melanated reference for all things Star Trek across all four quadrants. I am Travis, and we are going to do a review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 8, entitled Sanctuary. I am joined today with some of my illustrious members of the Black Alert Podcast. Please feel free to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ray. Hope everybody's ready for this episode. We're digging deep.
I'm Tia. Hello again, everyone.
I'm Mal.
All right. And like I said, this week's episode is Discovery Season 3, Episode 8, entitled Sanctuary. It was directed by Commander William T. Riker himself, Jonathan Frakes. This week's episode takes us to Book, to his home planet of Quajon. He's got a message that some bad things are going down on his planet, and his planet, like I said, Quajon, apparently had its ecosystem negatively affected by the burn. There are three plots this week. The A plot, Book Michael on Quajon plot. Plot B is the exploration of Giorgio's medical condition, and then C focuses on Rin and his new relationship with the Discovery crew. What'd y'all think?
I liked it. I think there were better scenes than the entirety of the episode, I would say. But I do think you could see a difference in some of the writers, I guess, at least for the last two episodes, Unification 3 and this one.
Mm-hmm. Reina, what'd you think?
I definitely enjoyed a lot of the action scenes. Also, the one-on-ones, with Culber and Giorgio. Definitely Detmer flying solo. that was great for me to see. Finally, some action for the bridge crew. Hope we get some more. And I definitely want to hear get some more information about the Federation and this deceit or untrustworthiness, this reputation being shattered amongst the other worlds. I definitely want to get to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mal, what are your thoughts?
I was really happy to see some character development from some people who've been present but not really having a voice. I was really happy about that. I got some things that I want to bring up later, but I want to jump off the bat and say I was very, very happy, if I am interpreting it correctly, with how they handled Adira. I was very concerned about the non-binary being and her being joined, being used as a cheat, and it made me really, really happy to hear them say that they had those feelings before the joining, and so that identity crisis was, for lack of a better term, was happening prior to the joining. So it wasn't like I have all these different personalities in me, so now I'm confused, but this is who I am.
And I'm glad you brought the situation with them up, because I did not include them in my list of the A, B, and C plots earlier, and I should have found a place to that storyline in, because it's the relationship between Dira and Stamets is an important one on the show, and definitely something that we need to. And Dira on their own is something that we need to be exploring as well. So. Thank you for bringing that up so early. But let's see if we can't bring this down on a chronological discussion of the episode a little bit. Go back to the beginning. So first we saw Giorgio have her conversation with Culber, and it was a tense one. I don't want to ever be in a doctor's appointment with her. What do you guys think?
I think at this point, to the crew of the Discovery, it's okay. She's a curmudgeon. That's who Giorgio is. That, I think, will, at this point, they've sort of taken away her teeth in a way.
Mhm.
But there's also a little moment in that scene where she talks about, I killed, you sound like my mother, and I killed my mother. And Michael's there at the same time, and Michael's like, no, you didn't. And so there's not a lot of in some aspects, she's just being rude to be rude. And there's no bark behind her bite sometimes. Oh, wait. Is that it's more bark than bite. That's the turn. Sorry.
Right?
Yeah, definitely that was one of my favorite scenes. Just, them going back and forward. One of those patients that comes into the emergency room who's been there a few times, but at this point we already know what's going on with you. Okay, we'll set you up in room 3. Cool. We're trying to help you, but you're hitting back at us. It's fine. We've figured you out already, and we're gonna get it together. Really enjoyed that moment.
Yeah.
I like Giorgio's insistence on not playing well with others. As we kind of talked about earlier, or not here, but in general, it really, to me, speaks of the truth of trauma and living in a world where you have to survive a certain way, where and the idea that she's just not trusting. She's just, why would I trust people? That's the vulnerability there is just not yet learned and earned for her. And I know for a lot of people outside, well, why don't you trust people? Why don't you? Well, have you lived in that society? You know what I mean? This is Black Alert Podcast, so I'm gonna call it. It's yeah, I got lots of white friends. Doesn't mean I trust them all 100%. You know what I mean? You never know, and so you always kind of have that guard up. So I like that aspect of that character of no, she has this entirely different upbringing and world experience, and it isn't just going to go away because everyone is all of a sudden being nice to you.
Yeah, she came from a world where they will literally stab you in the back. So she constantly has to be on guard. My only concern with Giorgio, and I think, is that she's going to get Borgified, in so much as she is the threat level of the mirror universe is now gone. She is now their pal as opposed to a potential threat. And having her there in the past, and then having her as part of Section 31, she always had this undercurrent of she could kill us all, and now she's you've all referenced, she's kind of a curmudgeon. And you kind of just want to pinch her cheeks when she gets it's I killed my mother. No, you didn't. It's good. She's getting to be a little too soft, and I'm hoping we get to see her harden up sometime soon. So on to the A plot. Book got a message that some stuff has gone down on his planet. He needs he'd like to have Michael come with him, but they go through the chain of command, and things occur differently this episode than they did in a previous episode. I just wanted your thoughts on this. I'm going to stay a little vague and let you guys go into the details. Ray, you want to go first this time?
Well, we were going by the protocols and rules, but apparently we're going to be at observation, head into Quajon, but we're going to take a back seat a little bit. We're just going to stay on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to send Michael and Book in to take care of what they need to, but it's an interesting take that Saru does this time versus dealing with the Starfleet manual.
Right.
You see him loosen up just a little bit on this episode. Still sticking to his guns a little bit, but definitely giving some leeway for things can happen. Let's be ready.
Mm-hmm. TJ, what are your thoughts?
Oh crap! I forgot that's me. Sorry. It's my government name, so my mother tells me I hold grudges, so I'm just going to resemble that opinion that she has of me and just say this much. The scene where Osiris and is it Osiris or Osira? I hear.
Well, we weren't getting quite there yet. I'm just going to try to keep it chronological. So we're at the bit where Michael and Book bring it to Saru and what his actions are to get them to go.
Okay, I guess
I'm
Now,
being vague because I know that there's going to be some
yeah.
contention here.
It's all like, so for me, it's all connected in a way, but I guess I will say this much. It's funny how we now have the crew to Discovery now has the time for this side mission and not 2 episodes ago. That's all I will say on that.
All right, I'm gonna. I actually liked it because it was actually calling back to 2 episodes ago, where now I'm forgetting his name, but the Admiral called out Saru too for being
Admiral
like,
Vance.
had you brought this to my attention, maybe I would have okayed. And so the fact that this time when something was brought to him, he's like, okay, well, let's run it up the chain together and see what happens. So I liked that growth. I like the fact that he too was like thinking about how he should be handling things, which allowed for this different story and allowed for it to go that way. So for me, that's what I saw and that's what I liked. It was multiple points of character growth therein.
I did enjoy that he grew that he took the Admiral's suggestion and then took it up the chain. I feel like he owed Michael an apology after that situation, though, once he recognized that he did, in fact, take the wrong tack last time, and that had he, taken it to the Admiral, we may have had an entirely different situation. So Michael was held responsible last episode. I think this episode would have been nice to see Saru take on some of the responsibility from that last episode himself. Moving on to Book's Planet, and again, it's how am I pronouncing this?
Quajon.
Quajon. So we're at Quajon. Quajon has had some negative impacts from the burn. Is this the first time we're finding out that a planet has had some kind of negative effect from the burn?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because I know, because we all saw the graphic of all the ships blowing up, but we didn't see any planets like actually negatively affected. It seems like the burn is a lot deeper.
Well, it's definitely been mentioned, but this is like the first time that we actually get down to a planet where we can see the actual effects of what's happened.
Yeah.
And how it's, become a generational problem for the inhabitants of that planet. Now, they've had to adapt and change their way of life so that they could survive.
Right.
Without the Federation being there to assist. So they've had to do what needs to be necessary. And so fortunately, making some wrong decisions or allying themselves with the wrong folks, making the wrong deals. But yeah, the times are tough.
Yeah, I saw the Emerald Chain. So they've contracted out to the Emerald Chain.
The mafia.
Yeah, and not just the mafia, but they feel like a for-profit version of the Federation.
Well,
they come in, they solve your problems, and they do it for cash, as opposed to whatever the Federation did.
So
I mean, it's a power vacuum. It feels honest and it feels real. You know what I mean? When you have some kind of catastrophe like that, and there aren't necessarily resources there to step in, and you step in, or if there's not someone there, someone's going to fill the void, and some people are going to be more scrupulous than others. So how badly do you want it?
I'm surprised we don't have the Ferengi, that we haven't seen the Ferengi in the Emerald Chain yet.
Strange, right?
Well, yeah.
Are we in the Alpha Quadrant? Like, do we know which quadrant we're in?
Well, Earth is in the Beta Quadrant, but I don't know that it even matters. I mean, Discovery's just like bouncing around between all the quadrants.
That's true. But, at least in the DS9 era, like the Gamma Quadrant had its own sort of political trends, and we know Delta Quadrant was barely explored. So, I was wondering if we would get sort of, or do they even separate these areas by that at this point? But
well, Michael did refer to, him being in another quadrant, both being in a whole new quadrant. So yeah.
Maybe they've renamed them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is strange that there are no Ferengi. I have some thoughts about why that could be, but I will save that for later.
Okay. So, they get down to the planet. There's we meet Book's brother. Book's got another name. Book's got a government name. What do we think about the situation going on with Book? No, go ahead, Tia.
So his name is Terex, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I believe the spelling on the captions were not.
Uh-huh.
I would have not have gotten Terex from that, but it's that, and it's so interesting that he leaves his home planet and he takes what I guess at this time period would be a human name. So I wonder if there's something to be taken from that in the episode, but there's not really any sort of interaction with that sort of plot until the brother's saying, "Oh, look at you! You don't even use your name anymore."
Yeah.
He criticizes him without an explanation as to why he chose that. He could have chosen a name from any other culture in the quadrant. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, he took a name that sounded like it was from a Family Guy character. So
Oh.
I'm not sure, where that came from. I'm looking forward to the story. A story, that he hasn't told Michael yet. You would think in that year he would have told Michael a whole stories like that, but I don't know. When I met my wife, I told her all the stories up front so she could never find out stuff later and I get in trouble for it. So I hold Book to that standard. And then, we had Rin, the antennaless Andorian, come in to have a meeting with Saru and Tilly, who have been spending the rest of the episode trying to figure out what Saru's catchphrase should be. As an aside to that, I'm kind of thinking that I'm glad that Michael's not his first officer, because I wouldn't want Michael to be walking around trying to figure out what Saru's catchphrase should be.
She would give him massive side eye.
Exactly.
That's not gonna do it. Especially what was it? The carry on. I said, oh gosh, it sounds like my last name. It's not gonna. It's not gonna work well.
The delivery of execute was.
It was horrible.
Oh no.
But he's trying.
I like it. I really do.
You like execute, or you like
no, I like the struggle. I like the idea of growing into the position, and we don't have it all figured out. I mean, everyone looks back at the original series and Next Generation and Kirk and Picard, they knew it from go, but you didn't get to see them as ensigns and lieutenants and the stuff they went through. It's one of the things I liked about the Kelvin reboot was the idea of having to learn the responsibilities and the chair.
I liked the subplot of Saru trying to figure out what it meant, what it was, what his line was going to be. My concern, like I said, the only thing I had an issue was I couldn't see Michael doing it. I could see Michael giving him massive side eye and just kind of, telling him to figure it out for himself. So I'm glad that she's not in that position. In the position to do that, I still think she would make a good first officer. But Saru, Tilly, and Rin meeting in the office. I think we saw a little bit of strength from Tilly that we hadn't seen before. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Tilly's definitely stepping up her game. She still feels a little bit uncomfortable in this position, but she's working at it. She seems to know what's going on the ship. She's giving him everybody, Saru, what's going on and giving more advice than she would have previously. Usually she's very docile or very tentative about giving any kind of her opinion. She seems to be trying to step in those shoes, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
I think we have another opinion. Another his opinion has entered the.
Criticizes me for holding grudges, so I've not made my peace with it. So I'm just gonna keep it moving.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you a cat. I'm gonna get you a cat and we're gonna name him Grudge.
It must be. The thing is, it's just that one sticking point of the change of first officer and the choice that
Yes.
I can't get over. And, it's because I brought my own sort of wishes and expectations into Discovery, and I've barely been able to realize it. Like seeing Michael as first officer and seeing her in the big chair. Like that one I forgot, I think it was episode 4 when they found the Barzan protected
The spore ship,
bank.
the seed ship.
Yes, and she was leading the crew there. The Black
looks
Alert was
supernatural.
just so powerful, and I was just like, I really want this. I really want this. And then the next episode, she loses it. So
Yep.
yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm the one to ask on this one.
No, it's important. I mean, it's still some I wouldn't say bitterness, definitely just some disappointment in the way Tilly is being treated, or someone else other than Michael. I hope that the writers pick up on that. Definitely lead us in a different direction where Michael is appreciated. Period. I'm sorry. That's just basically it.
I kind of feel like I wish they just hadn't given Michael this slot. They hadn't given her the job in the first place, so they wouldn't take it away and give it to Tilly. Just don't have her be number 1 yet, and have her get the job when they're ready to let her keep the job. Because getting it and then firing her, that was a lot for me. Okay, so
yeah, but it's good. It's good dramatic tension, and at the end of the
understand from a
day,
story standpoint. Yeah. So going back to the office scene, like I said, Tilly showed a little bit more strength, and then we moved back down to the
I just want to call it the Claire Huxtable moment. She had a Claire Huxtable moment.
She did. She did. Can you tell us what that Claire moment was?
When he walked in, I need to speak to Captain. She's like, no, not that tone, and not in this room. You better march your ass back outside. I liked that moment. I was like, okay, that moment actually made me feel. It didn't alleviate my trepidation about the choice, but I did feel okay. I could see her growing into this. That was a nice little beat.
Yeah. And so then back to Giorgio. We had Giorgio with Dr. Pollard this time. We got to see Dr. Pollard for the first time in a few weeks. They did a scan, and Giorgio started glitching like she was in the Spider-Verse. What do we think's going on?
Oh, should I go ahead? Okay.
Sure.
I was waiting for someone to raise their hand. I'm getting thoughts of, wow, his name just escaped me. The head of Section 31, Season 2. I'm getting that sort of Leland. I'm getting that memory of the, what his AI did to his body.
That's right.
And so I'm seeing that, and I'm thinking, well, is this related? Because I don't know, we're still being told that Michelle Yeoh is going to lead a Section 31 series.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's making me think that this is setting up that move.
Maybe it's not her with them. Maybe this is like some kind of copy that's with them on Discovery, and the real her back in Discovery Time. Huh. Okay.
Interesting.
All right. So moving on, we've got Book has a brother who's not really his brother, but he's his brother. He's leading his people on the world. What do we think of what we learned about the planet and their deal with Osiris? We haven't talked about Osiris yet. So what do we think's going on? Anyone?
There's definitely some friction there with the brothers. There definitely some family dynamics there. There's definitely some residual bitterness from Cain. I think that's brother's name, towards Book leaving. Kind of, he definitely mentions, our grandparents, left us this, and we were supposed to take care of it, and you left. There's a lot of that there. And I probably, most of us have dealt with some kind of issues, family in that regard. Also, times are hard on this planet apparently, and they had to make this deal with Osiris. I want to know what else, other than resources, but what was really the exchange? I would love to hear about that more. If anyone else has.
Osiris is terrifying to me.
Yeah, I think we should take this opportunity to talk about Osiris, because she's this season's big bad. Talking about her. Firstly, she's an Orion woman, and in the past, You know, in the original series, the Orion women were just the slave girls dancing around, and then we learned in Enterprise that they were the true power on the Orion world, and then in Lower Decks we learned that they'd gotten past this whole Orion pirates thing, that they were just trying to be regular members of the Federation. But it looks like in the absence of the Federation, they've gone back to piracy, and Osiris is the mob boss.
Who enslaves the former enslaved, who
Mm-hmm.
enslaves others.
Hmm.
And that interaction between Osiris and Saru, when she discusses how they've handled that trauma or that history. And I was watching it and I had to stop, because to hear a character say, oh, well, we managed to get over it. We don't live in our victimhood. I was like, oh, the changelings. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we hear from the founders a lot when we're trying to have this conversation. And so I think we mentioned it earlier that this episode was written by a Black writer. And so that one was probably one of the Discovery conversations that really just sort of knocked me back, because it felt genuine in its sort of purpose.
Yeah. You've got like different groups who have different attitudes towards their enslavement, their periods of enslavement. It makes me wonder where the Kelpians are now, because 1,000 years ago when he left, the Kelpians had come out of their bondage, and they'd taken the ships of their slave masters, and they were about to go do their own thing. And apparently 1,000 years later, they're still talking about it. They're still talking about the Kelpians as people who have been enslaved. So what does that mean? What does that mean for the Kelpians? Do they fall back into bondage somehow?
I don't know. I want to tackle the thing about Osiris and the Orions and history.
Yeah, please.
Without going on too much of a digression, revolutionaries are not suited to create to run the system they're fighting for. One of the biggest problems throughout history when it comes to revolutions is they're not trying to fundamentally create a new world. Oftentimes, when you have rebellions and revolutions, there's an inversion of the same power structure as opposed of a demolishing of the power structure.
For example, Cuba.
Or even the United States. Like when
True.
we fought for our independence, we could have become a monarch. We could have done whatever. But instead it was like, no, like we don't like the system. We're going to create a new type of order. We're not going to invert the order. We're not going to invert the status. Like, and even if it's not a country, but if it's even like within class, right? Like, so are you trying to destroy the class system, or do you just want to put yourself at the top of it? Do you really want equality, or do you just want the power that comes there? And that's what I kind of see with Osiris, and what's going on here is this idea of like, well, there's this vacuum, there's this thing, and you know what? It worked for them, so it's going to work for me, and I'm going to do whatever. And
that's what you're saying that the Orions now have done what the Federation did, but they've kind of just put themselves at the head.
So yeah, because it's one of the most difficult things to do is when you've spent your time being abused, you want to protect yourself from that kind of abuse, and the best way to do that is to make sure no one can do anything to you, and to then like subvert everyone else so that they can never hurt you again. But that's not healing. That's protecting, right? And so that's what I find interesting about this story is like, and I'm curious to see where it's going. Is that what's happening? Is this possibly a commentary on just inverting a power structure versus fundamentally demolishing a power structure? And to bring it to modern day, it's like when the conversation of defund the police, like what does that mean? Does it mean like, no, we need to like invert the power structure of what it is, or are we saying no, this thing doesn't work and we need to find something completely new that fulfills the role but in a much more justice and equitable way?
Well, it kind of goes back to the questions that the Navarans, Vulcan, Romulans brought up a couple of last episode, where they said that the Federation wasn't trustworthy anymore, and
Oh, I'm totally curious about what the Federation was up to.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then the Andorian, Rin was telling
Rin.
Tilly this week that kids were scared of the Federation, what the Federation would do.
Well, I
Did the
think it's interesting.
Federation
Fascinating.
did the Federation have a dark period? Did they go dark?
I mean,
But
something
I don't
must.
think they're capable of it though. Like with DS9 and Voyager sort of being the farther series we have other before Discovery jumped forward, we knew that they were capable of it.
Yeah.
With the disease that they gave the changelings, with the
Mhm.
plans, what they've done, what they did to Odo, and they were willing to go to genocide.
The things that Cisco has done.
Even season 1 Discovery touched on that too, with the planet, with the Klingon planet,
when they were going to destroy all the Klingons.
So yeah,
I would say this though about the Federation, right? Have they always, outside of the we're going to commit genocide aspect of it, some of the qualifications to join the Federation requires assimilation in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so the Federation isn't a healthy, I would say it's healthier than most, but it is not a healthy organization.
Yeah.
And so I can't, that's exciting for me that Discovery is going to try and do it. And I hope they have this discussion in a very just healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of what we're getting with the Michael not following rules. Now Saru not following rules. This episode, we're kind of learning that, and then last week with the Vulcan saying that the needs of the many don't always outweigh the needs of the few. We're
Which
kind
is
of
true.
we're starting to learn that the Federation's rigid adherence to rules isn't necessarily the best way to go. This could be good. Go ahead.
Does Reina, you got anything you want to
No,
add?
I'm good. Go ahead, Mel.
No. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few is true most of the time, but not all the time. I think that's awesome. I really like that there is this theme about what is dogma and what is canon.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, do I do it? Do I bring up a
Shake the table. Shake the table.
No, so one of my favorite. I'm gonna jump genres and properties here, but like one of my favorite series of all time is the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, and there was this really, really, really great passage in one of the books where basically trying to minimize spoilers, there was a culture where a person of that culture got to see where they end up like a millennia in the future.
Yes.
And then she got to live backwards all the way to her children, where she got to see consequence, and then she saw the action that led to the consequence, and then the action that led to, and this idea that like when tradition for tradition's sake is cultural death.
It's all good. In any case, looking at this as an ideology and a dogma and a canon perspective raised an interesting point to me. I wonder if at some point, Saru and Michael are going to be like, "This isn't Starfleet." Kind of like a bunch of fans are like, "This isn't Star Trek." They're going to look at the new Starfleet as not canon. This isn't the Starfleet that they're used to, and we're going to have to see the journey.
I think that's kind of the point. This idea that like a rigid following tradition for tradition's sake is cultural death, right? Because if you don't understand why you're doing something, then there isn't really a purpose behind it. And then if you don't understand the why, you're not thinking, you're not understanding, you're not evolving, you're not growing. I keep thinking about that story about the pot roast. You all know about the pot roast story? So I mean, I've heard it from all different places now, and it's gonna end up being a trope somewhere. But the whole point is that there's this couple and they're cooking a pot roast for dinner. As one of them is preparing it, they cut part of the pot roast off, and their partner says, "Why are you doing that?" She's like, "Oh, well, it's how my mom always did it." And so they go to the mom and they're like, "Well, why did you do that?" It's like, "Well, that's how my auntie always did it." And like, that was how and so they finally get back to like a grandma or great grandma or something, and they're like, "Why do we cut the end off of the roast? And she says, oh, because when, your granddaddy and I were growing up, we were so poor, we couldn't afford a large enough pot. So we always had to cut it to make it fit. And so you did something that you needed to do once upon a time in the past that you're continuing to do, even though you don't need to do it anymore.
It's
But
an
if you
tradition.
yeah, and so if you're not ever challenging your traditions and the reasons behind them, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up to be lied to and to be manipulated and to have those things corrupt you, for lack of a better term.
Okay, Detmer. Detmer seems to have overcome her issues. She's
Yes,
now,
finally.
Carathrace. What's up?
Yeah, she hopped on the ship and she took the helm. She went manual. I said, "Oh yes, this is what I'm asking for. Thank you very much. Trust in yourself. You have the ability. You wouldn't be here if you didn't." You know?
Yes.
And I love the whole interaction with Grudge and Rin. It's like, I would love you as my in the cockpit anytime. Yeah, it's great. It's just it reminded me of watching, to step out of Star Trek to go to another sci-fi space, but it reminded me of Rey when she first got a hold of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And she was just like, I got this. And it was great to see, her confidence boost. Even Owu was looking at her like, that's my girl. Like, yes, you finally stepped out of your shell and doing what you're here to do. And forget the rules.
Yep.
She's rogue. Although that little word kind of hit me a little bit. It's like, oh, she's going rogue. I wonder if she's going to be put down a chain, some disciplinary actions on her, but I don't think so, obviously, because she's
not going to
saved the day. Yeah, but that won't happen. But yeah, I was really happy for her, considering all the trauma she's been through, and you can definitely see it. She's emotionally struggling. So I'm definitely happy to see her do that.
Yeah, I think Detmer is very quickly going to become one of my favorite characters on the show if they keep building. I'm hoping they don't just, she's better now and we never hear from her again. And she and Owo just share like meaningful looks on the bridge from time to time, and that's it. Because that's still my concern about, like, Bryce and Reese. They high five each other. They've got like there is a subtext of broness between those two that I feel like should be explored. Like, I feel like there should be some episodes where those two get into some hijinks, and as yet it has not happened, and it's a constant source of disappointment for me. So
yeah, no, I would, and I say this because I'm such a fan of Deep Space Nine, and they did it so beautifully, so it can be done, where you can have a show that can have such a deep bench of characters to go to and flesh out. And
yeah.
I would like to see that, more of that too.
I mean, Cisco never lost. We never lost anything about the gravitas of Cisco's story, because Julian and Miles were having their little war stories. Like, let us into all of their lives. It's called Discovery. It's not called any one character. So, I guess kind of wrapping this up, Osiris gets mad. She leaves. She has threatened a war. Saru has now broken his word to the Admiral and violated the rules, and he and Tilly. I'm looking forward to the jail time that they get next week. Or not. I'm sure nothing will happen. But yeah, so, and then Book is going to stick around. Book is staying with them. What do we think of having an empath on a Starfleet ship? It's weird, right?
Empaths unite.
Empaths unite. Hopefully they actually tackle an empath character as well as they did on Nepenthe as a continuing role of that position.
Well, I was just going to mention I think probably the music, the song that's somehow bouncing around characters is probably something. And here is another sort of throwback for me, is what Dax and what the music did to the Dax character. And they discovered an entire identity. So I don't know if this is something similar, but the sort of nefariousness of this music is making me think of that. This is sort of the importance of what Michael's doing, though. And that's part of what upsets me, is like millions of people were killed, millions. and no one bothered to find out what happened until she got there. And now that she's this close to discovering it. I don't know. It seems strange
What is
to
the
me.
Federation hiding?
Exactly.
What is
They
Vance
have to
hiding?
be. They have to be hiding something.
You know,
I assume that's why they didn't want her to go and get the black box in the first place.
I mean, because this seems like a fairly simple solution to this problem. They had to have been hiding, right?
And you get the Vulcans to leave the Federation. Must
I
be
mean,
something.
it's like, it's like a corporation, spilling oil into, someone's river or lake, and the whole cover up after it. It reminded me of Chernobyl, to be honest, the
Mhm.
series. And it's like,
Good point.
oh, okay, so we're gonna just not tell anybody that this is happening, and we're gonna hide it, and we're gonna punish everybody who tries to speak out on it.
I like that Chernobyl reference. That's, I think,
That's my
spot
show.
Yeah.
on.
I loved it.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out more.
I have always been wondering about the burn, thinking back to that Next Generation episode. So I'm really curious to see where it's going there. I would like to shift gears a little bit, and I would like to mention something that I found very cool narratively and thematically with this episode,
Mhm.
which was this planet was dealing with a threat, with an existential threat, and they had been doing all these things to deal with it, and the solution in the end again was communication, was the idea of reaching out and communicating with, and it makes me think about, like, how do we handle threats? How do we react to threats? Are we immediately getting defensive and shutting people down, or are we stopping to say, okay, well, wait a minute, well, what's going on with them, or are we reaching out to them, or maybe it's just a misunderstanding, and we can work it out. So I did really like that at the end of the day they solved this generational problem through talking and empathizing with each other. Again, it was empaths who were able to solve it, and I think that's a really great and very, very Star Trek theme.
Absolutely.
To kind of put a button on that episode with.
Absolutely. And then to wrap it up, I want to bring it back to Adira Kulbitz, because I love the two of them together. That hashtag Kulbitz is wonderful. And I'm going to shout out to my 9-year-old daughter who wants them to just adopt Adira.
I am for it. Yes.
I'm sorry, they are an amazing character. My daughter loves them. She loves that they play the cello. It's just everything about them is fantastic, and she wants her two favorite characters, Culber and Stamets, to adopt her. So, but let's think about them for a second. I'm glad that they're able to live their identity and make it clear on the show. But I guess this is an artifact of the show being made now, as opposed to being made a thousand years from now. But it kind of feels like it's sad to me that 1,000 years in the future they still had to have that conversation, and it still had to be awkward. Like, it wasn't just something that, oh yeah, just so you know, my pronouns are this, and they didn't expect that they would just be okay with it.
Yeah.
This is something I struggle with and am curious with a lot when it comes to doing sci-fi shows set in the future, which is, are you depicting the world that you want to see, or are you gonna deal with contemporary things as they are now, so that we can start the conversation now? So I don't know if it's fair to lobby that criticism at the episode for that, if it's getting the conversation started now. And in fact, I'd argue that the original series and Next Generation, to a degree, tried to do this, like, look, everything's just fine, it's just going to happen, look what it can look like. And just showing what it can look like hasn't done anything to bring it about. You know what I mean? And so, like, okay, well, how do we get there? It doesn't just happen. It takes work. So what are the works? What are the steps that we need to do to make that happen? And I'm hesitant to criticize an episode for depicting a future where something like that is still seen as kind of uncomfortable, when we're clearly not comfortable with it now. And it allows characters who are watching it to know, like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable when you're doing this. You know, like, it's not
Right.
supposed. And so that I just,
And
it's,
I
it's,
want
a,
to
it's, a,
clarify.
it's a tightrope balance.
I didn't mean to criticize. My concern is there because you know I've tweeted about this in the past. Whenever there's a story gap, I feel like rather than say, oh, the writers are weak, or to criticize the writers, I always like to fill in my own explanation for it. It's kind of I think it comes from years of reading comics where like I fill in the gutters. To me, I wonder, is there a story reason that it's uncomfortable for them to make that announcement to Stamets? Did something happen to society where it became a problem again? And the reason I ask is because there is a line in the original Star Trek, sometime in season 3, where Captain Kirk says that the male-female dichotomy is, universal.
Gene Roddenberry was the sexist, but
And because it was 1969. So, throwing that into the context, I wonder if there is a point where people think that again. They've only recently become comfortable opening up about it again, 1,000 years from now, which would be a sad indictment of some things in the Star Trek universe. But at the same time, I think it would give it some depth and show again that history doesn't always swing in a straight line. That it, the pendulum goes back and forth.
Well, I think that's why it's interesting they chose a character carrying a Trill symbiont, right?
Mhm.
Because obviously, at least just from watching the show and the franchise as a whole, the Trill would be less likely to be critical of
Right.
it. And so we have a human character carrying a Trill symbiont, and it would make me think that it's more of a human issue,
Right.
Star Trek, and not necessarily the universe issue.
Because we're already seeing a xenophobic Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a problem on the Earth, that the post-burn Earth,
Mm-hmm.
that it's gone backwards socially as well.
Which is not out of the, which is normal, I would
Yep.
say, at least historically.
Yep.
It's unfortunate, but
Yeah, I mean,
Does happen.
and again, I'm glad that they're able to have that exploration on the show now, and we get to see them open up
Mhm.
to people that obviously care about them. So I just want to open it up to the group and find out if there's anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up the show.
Nope, I think this
No.
is a pretty thorough view of episode 8.
Okay. Ray, was there anything that you wanted to add?
I'm wondering if Book is gonna join Starfleet. I have a little hope for him, or maybe
Ensign Book.
Well, once we figure out what's going on with the Federation first, I would like to get some more truth there first. There was a little inkling at the end. It's like, well, I'm staying for a while. Oh, at what capacity? Are you going to be living on your ship, or are you going to actually come join us more often?
Right.
I definitely want some more cello and piano duets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bring it on.
And if Book becomes an ensign, I mean, he could be first officer of a ship in the next couple of weeks. So that would be awesome. Mal, was there anything that you wanted to say?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So, thanks to everyone for listening to our first review episode. I think it went pretty well. You can still hit us up on Twitter at Black Alert Pod. If you have any topics or subjects you want us to discuss, you can post them there. And I promise we will look, I will review, and it will be lots of fun. Until next time, I'm going to say this line. It's going to feel awkward coming out of me. I'm going to be like Saru saying hit it. Keep on trekking.